Hello, everybody. We're live here with Indrani. She is,
Hello.
hi, Indrani. Indrani is a Tribeca Film Festival 2019 award winning director, photographer, and activist, empowering diversity, women, LGBTQIA community, and environmental sustainability. Indrani, would you share your thoughts with us on the work that you do and women's empowerment?
Thanks so much. I'm honored to be here with you today. I've worked for the past 20 years on women's empowerment and empowerment of diversity and people at risk of domestic violence. I believe that there is so much untapped human potential that is being wasted, and that is all around the world. You have half of the population that is not being heard as much as the other half. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing has been to give voice to those who are not often heard, both in the films that I direct, in the photography that I do, and in my social justice advocacy work. I'm currently a visiting lecturer at Princeton University, and I'm teaching a course called Moving Millions to Action with Film and Art for Social Justice and Human Rights. And it's a very exciting time to be teaching this subject. It's what I'm very passionate about, and finding so many students who are not only passionate, but really well-informed and really powerful in their visions of making a better world. And so I'm thrilled to help provide tools for them from my experience. And when I was a teenager, well, I grew up in India. I was born there. And as a small child, I worked with Mother Teresa. I helped my mother with translating because she was English and she didn't speak Bengali. My father's Bengali from India, so I spoke fluently and I could help her to communicate. So I got to spend a lot of time with Mother Teresa from a very young age, and to really see the power that a very small woman can have to create change and to uplift the people around her. When I was a teenager, I left India, I became a model, and I traveled around the world, and I became an actress as well. And I did both of those because I really wanted to learn how to use film and photography for creating the kind of change that I wanted to see in the world. And I made lots of money as a model, and I went back to India and I started a school there called Shakti Empowerment Education. I co-founded it with my father. It's cschool.org if you want to check it out. And it's really been the joy of my life. 300 children annually, as well as women for whom we provide vocational training and women's empowerment training, as well as literacy. And we also do microfinancing. We provide small loans to women who've completed the course. And it's been extraordinary to see how those women with just a little bit of support and just a very tiny amount of resources can do incredible work and can transform their lives and the lives of those around them. So that has been a wonderful learning experience, from seeing people who didn't have enough to feed their own kids within a few months transform themselves into creators of industry around them and being able to hire others to work with them. It's been really phenomenal and really inspiring. So the way I see the world, there are so many incredible people who have really fascinating stories and unbelievable abilities that are untapped. If we simply provide resources and skills for as many women as possible, we will change all of the ways that the world works. And women generally have a greater sense of responsibility for their families. It's been proven that when resources are given to women, they tend to spend them on healthcare, on education, and on what's best for their families. And so my goal is to just help these women to do what they would naturally do if they had access to some of the resources that the rest of us take for granted. Part of my work with cschool.org has been learning from the students, and that's been extremely rewarding because I've come to realize that nonprofits, I've worked with many nonprofits, and many of them go into situations without really understanding the problems that the people face. And so by listening and being respectful and letting them guide us, we can learn so much more about ways to help them to make the change they need in their lives, which ultimately is for the good of everyone. Now, this past year has been such a turbulent time for many people, with COVID, with Black Lives Matter, with the Me Too movements. And I think it's a really positive time in many ways because people have stopped and looked at their lives and looked at those around them and recognized that we can't continue to ignore the needs of others and hope that everything's just going to be okay. We have to take responsibility. And especially if we're in positions of power or positions of where we have abundance, we have an obligation and a responsibility to share with those who lack those items. Same thing goes for knowledge and education. I think the most valuable thing that one can do with one's time is to share one's knowledge with others. And I think that people often feel helpless in these times of change. They're looking for someone else to solve the problems, but ultimately it's up to each of us to step up and use the resources that we have at hand to make things better and to empower others who can do even more good work. So I think that one of the most exciting aspects of being a filmmaker is the ability to really create a new world. We imagine the future and we help everyone else in society to share in these imaginations. I like to think of artists and filmmakers as the myth makers of our time. I think that the collective imagination of the world is shaped very much by film and media. And so we have an enormous power and also a huge responsibility to use that access, that ability to create the possibilities of the future, and to use that responsibly, and to think about how we can enlarge our footprints in a positive way. We talk a lot about reducing our footprints when it comes to sustainability, but each of us creates a legacy in the world. And as we make choices of what to watch, what to buy, how to live, whom to care for, we shape the world around us. And we're very fortunate now to have more and more female filmmakers and filmmakers of color creating new narratives, exploring new possibilities. And I think that the experiences that people of diversity bring to everyone are extremely profound because they are finding new ways of dealing with the old challenges. So I think it's important not only for women to watch content created by women, and not only for people of color to support people of color who are making films and media, but for everyone to learn from each other, to deliberately seek out experiences that are different from those that we're used to, and perspectives that can give us new ways of seeing the world. I'm thrilled to be here as part of the Indigenous panel as well. And this summit is very exciting because bringing together Indigenous voices from around the world, I think, is incredibly powerful. And there is so much wisdom and shared ways of seeing the world that are different from the norms of what we're used to seeing represented in film and media. So I encourage each of you to really take advantage of this opportunity to learn from those that you haven't perhaps heard as much from, or perspectives that you haven't explored yet. And or if you have, if it's something that's familiar to you, then to go much deeper and to engage really in these wonderful conversations that are being had about how we can make the world livable again, how we can share resources, how we can live in harmony with each other and with nature. And in so many ways that we need to learn and grow as survive on this planet that is so beautiful and has given us so much. I think that we have some other guests that were supposed to be joining today, and I think they may be joining a little later. I'm thrilled to be here with you today, and I believe that there is nothing more transformative or more exciting than being able to have conversations with people that have different perspectives, and to bring women together and to bring together people of diversity of all kinds, so that we can enrich and strengthen our abilities to make the change we need in the world.
Thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom, and it's it's a blessing seeing the scenery behind you and also what difference you've made.
Thank you so much. Really a great honor to be here today.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Gail. I had a question for you about filmmaking.
Sure.
So, in terms of your filmmaking, what moves your soul with your filmmaking? What moves your soul? What lens are you looking through?
That's a lovely question. For me, it's all about transformation. I am moved when I see stories, when I feel and I get to experience people transforming. And I think that I started out as a photographer, and then I became a filmmaker because that process of transformation is so extraordinary. And it is something that, as you see others transforming, it inspires you to create your own transformation and to be the architect of the changes that you want to see in your own life. So that's what makes me very excited. I'm also really inspired by seeing and hearing voices that are not as often heard, the voices who have been silenced or have been ignored. And I find that the perspectives that people bring who have lived through or survived different kinds of suffering are incredibly empowering and incredibly wise. And I think there's so much to learn from those who have overcome major challenges.
You know, it's funny. We do a lot of work around voices, especially women's voices. And I remember there was a woman in Zimbabwe, and her mother is on a high echelon with some of the countries. Okay. And what was quite interesting was that they came to a conference, and they left. And when they left, we just interviewed the young woman on because we're not media. It was just something in the moment, and we interviewed her on mental health and body positivity. And so no one knew that when she got home, she would be accused of inciting women against men in Zimbabwe. Something that we may think is far-fetched here, but you never know what can happen.
Right.
Anyway, long story short, they put her in a jail, but they had nothing against her. They took her computer, her passport, and everything. We had this interview. We could have ran it then, but we knew that it wouldn't be a good idea because of the relationships with the country. So what we did was we ran it about 4 days later, 4 months later or 6 months later, and had nothing at all to do with what they were trying to place against her. The video was about body positivity. We ran it, and they released her from jail the next morning. And that's the power a story can tell. And I would love to know, what are some of the most powerful stories? It doesn't mean that the film or the video had to be the most perfect thing, but it was a story that told someone else's story through your lens, that they could see themselves in a new way. Can you share with me what that most, and with the world, what was the most powerful story like that you remember that that even inspired you?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I've done a lot of work with women who have overcome domestic violence, and women and men, from war-torn places. I was in Central African Republic, where I filmed a short film against malaria, with the UN. It was called Nothing But Nets. And part of the process of interviewing people there, about their experiences, I went there initially to talk about malaria, but I soon realized that the experiences of being through a war were far more on people's minds than the challenge of malaria, and just seeing how powerful and resilient people are, and how they could be so loving towards others after having experienced such terrible traumas. It was really moving to me, and I really recognize that we often think that that kind of suffering, that kind of wholesale destruction would make people broken or make them weak. But I think that it's wonderful to see how people can become stronger, even from having survived these terrible situations, and just how fortunate that we all are to have the basic things that we take for granted. That for me has been really, really eye-opening.
Wow. One of the things that is very powerful, um, one of the things that's very powerful is in a storytelling is people don't realize there are many vantage points in which to see a story. Which vantage point do you often like to tell your story through?
I really enjoy telling stories through a mythological lens. I feel that mythology shapes so much of our understanding of the world, and these stories that have been passed down for thousands of years, from generation to generation, they carry a great deal of weight and a great deal of psychological and social insights and importance. So I've enjoyed bringing stories, for example, an ancient Chinese legend that I brought to New York City, or another story that was a Celtic story of women that turn into seals in water and humans on land. Stories of transformation that are based on fantasy, but that relate to the very real aspects of each of our lives, where each of us has to find our ways to transform, to grow, to